The scene opens at the modern campus of Daewon University, the starting point for fascinating school romance stories. Amidst the rushing crowd in the schoolyard, a boy running for his life suddenly bumps hard into an approaching girl, making her cry out in startlement. Furious at the carelessness, the girl yells at him to watch his step while the boy awkwardly bows his head to apologize. She is about to throw more harsh reproaches, but suddenly stops, all her frustration instantly vanishing upon clearly seeing the other person's face. In a sparkling halo, the boy with extremely gorgeous looks caringly asks if she is hurt anywhere. Before the heart-shaking beauty, the girl freezes for a few seconds, prompting her accompanying friend to speak up and bail her out by saying it was just an accident. The boy hastily bows in a final apology and runs off, leaving the dazed girl reaching out to stop him, but his silhouette is already fading away. Extremely excited about their rare handsomeness, she continuously shakes her friend hard and presses to know who on earth that male idol is. It turns out to be Seongwoo, a famous upperclassman from the visual design department with a personal page boasting a massive number of followers. Mesmerized by the picturesque photos, the girl silently blames her friend for waiting until now to reveal information about this perfect male idol. The story continues outside the lecture hall as the girl is still in shock, even longing for the male idol's phone number so much that she is willing to do anything. The atmosphere in the classroom suddenly becomes quieter as students start settling into their seats to prepare for the new lesson. The clicking sound of typing echoes steadily as a slender hand diligently works on a laptop, seemingly highly focused on the task. Two girls sitting next to each other chatter endlessly about Seongwoo's latest post, asserting that he truly has an influence no less than a famous star. When asked about her personal impression, Doe suddenly blushes in embarrassment, only daring to mutter that the upperclassman's image is indeed very good. Teased by her best friend about her hidden feelings, Doe panics, waving her hands in denial and affirming she purely admires his kind personality. The conversation shifts to Doe's busyness since early morning, as she reveals she has been hustling with freelance projects and countless unnamed chores. A radiant smile blooms on the little girl's lips when talking about her goal of working hard to cover tuition and living expenses, even though she already holds a prestigious scholarship. Witnessing her friend's effort and adorable personality, the best friend can't help but marvel and joke that she wishes she had given birth to such a wonderful child herself. The atmosphere instantly becomes dramatic when the friend leans in close to whisper meaningfully, revealing the shady relationship between male idol Seongwoo and a girl named Seo Saran, leaving Doe stunned. The best friend pinches her cheek and reassures Doe that it is probably just a nonsense rumor, just as Doe shockingly realizes Saran's presence. Saran elegantly steps into the room amidst a warm welcome, not forgetting to express her gratitude for being notified in advance via phone. The whole class is suddenly abuzz as everyone gathers around in awe of the luxurious European trip she just shared on social media. With a confident demeanor, she casually explains that traveling around is to broaden her horizons for her upcoming artworks. When asked about the reason for her sudden appearance, Saran softly strokes her hair seductively and asserts that the person she is looking for is currently right in this room. The loud and clear calling of Han Doe's name makes the girl sitting huddled in a corner suddenly jolt in extreme astonishment. Saran's decisive footsteps gradually approach her target, the sound echoing on the floor creating a pressure-filled atmosphere. The stylish sneakers stop right next to Doe, marking the unignorable presence of the most famous female upperclassman in the school. Saran gives a radiant smile instead of a greeting, while Doe can only sit still and bear it with a tense and fearful expression. Saran's sharp gaze is glued to the person opposite her as she begins to bring up the issue, asking if Doe would mind if she asked a big favor. Saran leans close to Doe's ear, urgently pleading to see the psychology notes, while asserting Doe is the only close friend she can trust, accompanied by a promise to treat her to a lavish meal in gratitude, despite Doe breaking into a cold sweat with a highly anxious expression. Shadows of the past suddenly flash in her mind, where an authoritative Saran in a high school uniform suppresses a fearful, head-bowed Doe. Back to the present, Doe has to bitterly agree to send the documents, causing Saran to be unable to hide her smugness and continuously clap her hands in praise. Saran's eyes suddenly turn sharp when bringing up the fact that they used to be schoolmates, silently marveling at her luck to have a hardworking person like DOA by her side. The tense atmosphere completely takes over, leaving DOA with no choice but to look down at her keyboard, hiding the rising insecurity in her heart. Before leaving, Saran smiles brightly, waving goodbye and not forgetting to mention that she will soon reach out again later. Right at that moment, a few other students approach and offer to invite Saran outside for a private chat, receiving a very friendly nod of agreement. Watching Saran's retreating back, the mysterious smile on her lips seems to harbor some unpredictable scheme aimed at her old friend. The story wraps up when her classmate curiously asks about their high school relationship, forcing DOA to awkwardly admit their haunting past of sharing a class. The best friend looks at DOA with doubtful eyes, wondering if Saran was a bully from their middle school days, instantly making the atmosphere suffocating. Trying to brush off the tension, DOA steers the conversation toward upperclassman Seongwoo and secretly guesses that someone as famous as him must be dating someone. At DOA's flustered expression, her best friend excitedly presses close and interrogates whether she accidentally stumbled upon something shady to make such a firm claim. DOA can only laugh it off evasively, explaining that because Seongwoo is so popular she only caught wind of a few rumors, then quickly finds an excuse to leave early. She hastily packs her belongings, telling her friend about another lunch date if their schedules allow, and steps quickly out of the classroom. DOA's small silhouette walks alone along the quiet hallway, seemingly carrying a lingering worry that she can hardly share with anyone. Her destination is room 101, a place that seems to harbor a secret or an important date she has been longing for. Standing before the tightly closed door, DOA sighs softly with regret, tormenting herself over why she acted so impulsively as if she knew upperclassman Seongwoo very well. Stepping inside the tranquil space, she silently tells herself never to let herself repeat that silly and thoughtless mistake again. But the moment she looks up, DOA suddenly stops with a bewildered face upon realizing the room is completely empty, silently wondering didn't he promise to wait for her here. In the middle of the empty room, Seongwoo unexpectedly appears from behind and tightly hugs DOA, making her startle and scream in shock. Panting from panic, she reproaches him for scaring her to death, while he tenderly praises her cuteness and confesses his thrill when they sneak around together. DOA gently reminds him of the risk of meeting at school, but Seongwoo reassures her that this place is inherently deserted and no one comes by at this hour. He suddenly leans close to her ear, both bringing up ghost stories to tease her and cleverly warning that if she makes a loud noise, everyone in the hallway will hear it all. The surrounding space seems to settle, leaving only the throbbing heartbeats of the young couple in the room filled with shimmering light. Sitting next to each other on the long sofa, Seongwoo caringly asks about DOA's part-time job and receives the answer that everything is going on normally as usual. Her eyes look sad as she expresses pity for his hard work at the bar and offers to visit him more often since they rarely see each other lately. In response to that yearning, he flashes a radiant smile and firmly assures that he will always prioritize making time to be by her side. Looking deep into her lover's affectionate eyes, DOA's heart suddenly tightens as an unnamed feeling of insecurity abruptly hits her. That is when the suggestive rumors about the shady relationship between him and Lady Seo Saran once again echo in her mind, causing her trust to severely waver. DOA's eyes suddenly widen blankly as negative thoughts about the bad rumors continuously cling to her mind. Trying to dismiss the doubt, she silently tells herself that a wonderful person like Seongwoo would absolutely never betray her trust. She holds her head in torment for harboring such wicked thoughts, silently blaming herself for doubting her boyfriend, who is up to his neck with work and graduation. Noticing his girlfriend's abnormality, Seongwoo gently observes the briefly sad expression on her face with deeply caring eyes. He softly speaks up, asking if she is worried because he hasn't been keeping in touch often every evening lately. At that thoughtfulness, DOA confusedly denies it while he gently plants a kiss on her cheek, making her heart suddenly skip a beat. Seongwoo looks at her with absolute sincerity and promises that no matter how late, he will come home early, while apologizing for not giving her enough attention recently. His warm words and gentle actions move DOA so much that she blushes furiously, all the previous suspicions seemingly vanishing completely. She throws her arms around him and silently marvels at how lucky she is to have such a perfect and considerate boyfriend. Burying her head in his sturdy shoulder, she chokingly promises him that from now on she will love and treat him even better. Seongwoo gently puts his hand down, whispering that DOA just needs to keep doing what she is doing, and that is more than enough for him. His hand runs through her hair highly affectionately, creating an incredibly intimate atmosphere. Both are immersed in a passionate kiss, the world around them seemingly fading completely at this moment. However, the curtain is suddenly thrown open. A young man barges in and shouts, asking if this is their bedroom. The abrupt appearance makes the couple dead silent from extreme shock, their faces completely contorted at this ironic situation. The intruder clicks his tongue in utter contempt, expressing extreme annoyance at having to hear sensitive sounds this whole time. Loud banging noises echo out in the hallway, signaling a massive trouble waiting for them ahead. In a panic, DOA accidentally pushes hard, making Seongwoo tumble to the floor right in front of the stranger. Seongwoo sprawls out with a pained expression, and DOA can only frantically call out his name in sheer panic. She frantically apologizes and tries her best to help him up, causing her lover, despite his soreness, to exclaim that she truly has the makings of a shot putter. The young man Eunho coldly turns his back and walks away, ignoring DOA's desperate cries and the clear bewilderment on both their faces. DOA frantically clings to the door, fearing that rumors will spread if he just leaves like that, while Seongwoo still acts completely nonchalant. The upperclassman gently pats her head to reassure her, affirming that everything will be fine and advising her not to worry too much about the recent incident. She looks up at him with full doubt, silently wondering why he can be so certain about the safety of the secret. Seongwoo slightly bows his head in deep thought, seemingly considering some sort of plan in the quiet space of the room. A meaningful smile appears as he reveals that he actually has a bit of an acquaintance with that young man Eunho. Brilliant sunlight envelopes the entire scene of Daewon University, a place about to witness unpredictable upheavals in their secret relationship. The upperclassman carefully observes the hallway through the door crack to ensure no one is snooping before they wrap up their private meeting. The air conditioner sound still steadily hums on the high ceiling, adding to the chilliness and solitude of the space after the dramatic encounter. Standing alone with a heavy heart, DOA painfully admits her craving to make her love with upperclassman Seongwoo public for everyone to know. DOA gets lost in an illusion where she stands under the spotlight, boldly declaring to the whole school that she is dating upperclassman Seongwoo. In that sweet imagination, she secretly thinks the rumors about Saran will disappear and the two of them can comfortably hold hands strolling across the university campus. But immediately harsh reality strikes when she envisions herself besieged by malicious, sarcastic comments on social media. She dreads the scenario where mean-spirited people surround Seongwoo to slander that she is entirely unworthy of a perfect person like him. The terror reaches its peak when DOA imagines the scene where the upperclassman will casually break up because he feels protecting her is too much of a hassle. She holds her head in despair at the thought that exhaustion from public pressure will soon cause his feelings for her to wither. Snapping out of the self-delusional nightmare, DOA resolves to keep this secret hidden until the day he graduates to protect her peaceful school life. Realizing the danger from the sole witness, she frantically runs for her life down the hallway and loudly calls out Eunho's name to stop him. Panting heavily after the long sprint, DOA blocks the cold young man's path and earnestly begs him to spare a few minutes to talk. Contrary to her expectations, Eunho merely casts her a highly indifferent glance, then casually keeps walking, leaving DOA stunned to realize she was just ruthlessly ignored. DOA stood frozen, her face clearly showing shock upon realizing the frightening indifference from Eunho. She hurriedly chased after him, loudly calling for Eunho to stop for a moment because they really needed to talk things out clearly. Despite her panting and complaining that he was walking too fast, the boy remained cold and showed no reaction whatsoever. Seen from afar, DOA's lonely silhouette tailing Eunho along the quiet hallway created a highly helpless scene. The cruel ignorance from the other person made DOA blush with embarrassment, secretly angry and wondering why he could treat her like thin air. Although filled with fear, DOA told herself to clear things up, and she decided to silently follow him a little further. The entire Daewon campus appeared tranquil under the sunlight, a place hiding highly complex and mysterious relationships. Standing and watching Eunho casually check his phone in the schoolyard, she anxiously wondered if he was trying to avoid what he had witnessed with his own eyes. Doa's eyes looked sorrowful as she resolved to patiently observe and find the most suitable opportunity to speak up once again. She stopped at the vending machine area, drinking water while keeping her eyes on Eunho as he bent down to get his drink. Doa persistently sat opposite Eunho at the university cafeteria, trying to find an opportunity to break the cold silence from him. The neon lights on the ceiling shone down on the quiet space, reflecting the restless heart of the little girl upon being completely ignored by the other person. Fortunately, they shared the next class together, and Doa silently resolved to proactively speak up right when the lecture ended. Just hearing the professor announce the class dismissal, she suddenly jolted upon seeing Eunho quickly stand up and head straight for the door. Doa frantically stuffed everything into her backpack, her anxious eyes watching his decisive back gradually disappearing behind the door. Suddenly, she stopped with a completely bewildered face, silently wondering if she and Eunho had just actually made eye contact for a split second. She rushed out into the hallway and loudly shouted Eunho's name to stop him, asserting that they absolutely must have a clear conversation. Her face clearly showed panic as she chased after him while pleading for him to stop, but the boy remained cold and did not react at all. Her hand reached out in desperation, trying to grasp the last chance to explain everything. But being too hasty, she slipped and fell forward, her entire body slamming hard into Eunho's back, creating a highly awkward collision. The surrounding people witnessing the chaotic scene suddenly started buzzing, unable to hide their shock and questioning what had just happened right before their eyes. From a high-angle view, the forceful impact that made Doa tumble onto Eunho created a half-crying, half-laughing situation amidst the whispering and gossiping about this over-the-top antic. Brushing off her awkwardness, she panicked and shouted loudly asking if he was hurt anywhere while her face still clearly showed shock. Eunho suddenly turned around with a sharp, murderous glare that left Doa trembling and frozen before his terrifyingly cold attitude. The boy was suddenly stunned upon realizing Doa was having a nosebleed, immediately changing his attitude and anxiously asking if she was okay. Seeing the girl about to reach up and touch the wound, Eunho instantly spoke up to firmly stop her, fearing that action would make things worse. Unable to hide his annoyance, he gritted his teeth and asked just how hard she had crashed into him to bleed this much. The university space suddenly became strangely quiet, reflecting the tense atmosphere enveloping the two of them. At an isolated corner, Doa could only stand still with her head bowed, occasionally letting out hiccups out of sheer terror. Eunho's eyes narrowed in doubt as he bluntly questioned her true motive and asserted that her stalking behavior all day had been truly annoying. Eunho growled a threat to report Doa for stalking, causing her to panic and wave her hands, asserting that everything was just an unexpected accident. While Eunho coldly interrogated her about her true motive, Doa could only awkwardly hold her blushing, bleeding face out of extreme embarrassment. She hesitantly brought up the sensitive matter he had witnessed firsthand in the clubroom, making Eunho let out a soft, "Oh," as if he understood the issue. He bluntly exposed the passionate, intimate scene between her and Seongwoo in a public place, making Doa just want to scream out of utter humiliation. Doa frantically waved her hands, demanding him not to speak loudly about it, but Eunho casually reassured her that there was not a single soul around at the moment. He smirked, asking if this was the reason she had to miserably stalk him all day today. With a meaningful smile, Eunho brought up the idea that she wanted him to pretend he didn't see anything for fear the rumors would spread widely across the school. Doa hastily denied that intention, but Eunho instantly interrupted and warned her never to have such distorted thoughts about his personality. He looked at her with full contempt, then sarcastically asked if she felt embarrassed acting as if she were some famous star. Eunho asserted that he absolutely did not care about other people's romances and demanded Doa stop being delusional about him interfering in her private life. Night fell, enveloping the bustling city, a crescent moon hanging in the cloudy sky alongside brightly lit buildings. On the quiet street, late patrons still hurriedly walked past shops that were gearing up for late-night fun. Behind the luxurious bar, Seongwoo was working diligently under the admiring gazes of young girls. A girl in an alluring off-the-shoulder top suddenly called out proactively to break the bartender's concentration. With sparkling eyes, She straightforwardly asked for his personal social media account, being overly impressed by his attractive appearance. Seongwoo smiled politely, awkwardly thanking her when complimented on his highly impressive fashion style. The girl continued to push forward with a curious question, wanting to confirm whether an outstanding guy like him already had a girlfriend. Witnessing his flustered expression, the two accompanying friends couldn't help but giggle and began playfully teasing each other. Amidst the lively atmosphere, Seongwoo suddenly took the initiative to ask about the relationship between the two of them. He slightly curled his lips into a mesmerizing smile, confidently asking back what she was actually thinking about him in her heart. The story began with confirming the identity of Eunho, a male student possessing an attractive appearance, but carrying an incredibly icy aura. His fame spread so far that students from other departments also flocked to see him, constantly offering excited invitations to hang out. Many bold girls proactively approached to ask for his phone number, hoping to get a chance to get closer to this cold male idol. In response to that enthusiasm were only sharp glares and a cold interrogation that his lack of a reply was inherently the most satisfactory answer for them. After declaring he was very tired and demanding everyone to leave him alone, this very rude attitude ignited the resentment of the surrounding crowd. People started whispering and criticizing him as overly arrogant, arguing that his handsome looks could not cover up his terrible personality. They endlessly gossiped behind his back about him having anger management issues, ruthlessly spouting harsh words even to those with the best intentions. Despite the rudeness, there were still beauty-obsessed girls secretly admitting that Eunho's handsomeness truly made them unable to stop finding ways to get acquainted. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely tense when a young man couldn't contain his anger and yelled right in his face in the middle of the hallway. He pressed him, asking if he was deaf, then aggressively grabbed his collar, scolding Eunho as a talentless loser who liked to use his seniority to act all high and mighty. Eunho contemptuously asked whether age was something worth bragging about, making the young man go crazy and rush in to punch him repeatedly. Eunho's eyes suddenly flared up with intense fury, like a wild beast just awakened from a deep slumber. He immediately counterattacked and frantically unleashed his anger on the opponent amidst the hopeless, intervening screams of the surrounding people. That shocking assault on an upperclassman made the name Eunho famous throughout the school in a highly scandalous way. Wherever he went, he received avoiding gazes and whispers reminding one another not to foolishly mess with this cold-blooded guy. The rumors only truly died down when Eunho enlisted in the military and chose to live quietly and withdrawn after his return. Sitting blankly in front of the computer, DOA couldn't help but shudder at the thought that she had just accidentally angered such a terrifying figure. She tormented herself with fear of upcoming troubles, but still tried to reassure herself that a friendless guy like him would have no one to reveal the secret to. Startled to see the phone clock hitting past 10 at night, the little girl breathed a sigh of relief, casting all worries aside. DOA smiled radiantly as she remembered her lover's promise to get off work early and quickly texted to check on him with full anticipation. The couple enjoyed a rare moment together at home, but Seongwoo regretfully announced that he needed to grab some things and had to go to work right away. DOA hurriedly wiped the tables and chairs, silently reminding herself not to daydream but to go take a shower to feel more refreshed. Night fell, enveloping the high-rise buildings, signaling an impending, highly strenuous night shift. Under the dim streetlights, the neighborhood remained bustling with passers-by right outside the bar, where Seongwoo was working diligently. A small flame flared up in the dark as he took advantage of a short break to relieve his accumulated fatigue. His co-worker endlessly praised his charm as the number of customers skyrocketed and complained about the boss not hiring more staff yet. He suddenly changed the subject and curiously pressed to know if an outstanding upperclassman like him was truly still single. He only coldly asked back for the reason, making the other guy awkwardly explain that almost every patron who came here was curious about him. Seongwoo silently took a long drag of his cigarette, then exhaled, his eyes full of fatigue and pensiveness, as if hiding a secret. Finally, he looked straight at the other person and casually affirmed with certainty that he currently had absolutely no girlfriend. The co-worker shouted in astonishment upon hearing Seongwoo claim to be single, while the man himself just casually held a cigarette and looked away. Seongwoo's hands glided lightly across his phone keyboard replying to DOA's message, casually asking back why he would have to lie about that. The co-worker continued to curiously press about the identity of the pretty girl who often came looking for Seongwoo, just as a female figure was silently approaching. He was just describing the pale appearance of the mysterious girl when he suddenly stopped upon hearing an intimate call for Seongwoo right behind him. Turning around abruptly with a shocked face, the guy stuttered out a highly awkward greeting before the pressure-filled presence of the newcomer. Sheer terror was clearly visible on the sweating face of the guy, as he secretly feared that all their gossip earlier had been completely overheard by that girl. Meanwhile, DOA was restlessly checking the mirror in her workout clothes, silently complaining that she seemed to have gained weight, feeling her underwear unusually tight. While engrossed in adjusting her outfit, the phone buzzing continuously on the table amidst the quiet night suddenly caught her attention. DOA's eyes were glued to the screen, reading Seongwoo's message about being busy, silently feeling the hardship and the yearning welling up in her heart. She sighed softly with pity for her lover, resolving to cast aside all worries to take care of him and let him rest fully as soon as he returned. In the dark, DOA could not escape the obsession over the rumor that the relationship between Seongwoo and Saran had something highly shady. She stood silently in the room, her heart pounding with unease as her eyes still did not leave the brightly lit phone screen. Sweat beaded on her anxious face, and DOA clearly felt the throbbing beats of her heart facing unanswered doubts. She bit her lip tightly and reminded herself to stay alert, not allowed to let negative thoughts go too far. DOA secretly blamed herself for becoming overly sensitive, while she knew well that Seongwoo was struggling greatly to balance between his projects and part-time job. Meanwhile, at a deserted corner, Saran suddenly appeared and pressed for the reason why he hadn't bothered replying to her messages. Seongwoo awkwardly explained about being busy at the bar and tactfully declined the invitation to meet after work because his body was already exhausted. Saran flashed a mesmerizing smile, brought her slender hands up to caress his chin, and called out to him with deep affection. She leaned close to his ear, whispering seductively that when he was tired, he needed even more to find a truly comfortable bed to rest. Revealing that she had already booked a luxury suite, Saran made a highly tempting offer that instantly turned the late-night atmosphere suffocating. Saran pressed close and asked if he would go to the hotel with her, causing Seongwoo to freeze in astonishment. A meaningful smile appeared in the dark, as if all the cards were right in the hands of the mastermind. DOA jolted awake from the nightmare with teary eyes, her heart still beating wildly from the overly realistic fear. She sat blankly at her desk as the light of a new day began to creep into the room, trying to regain her composure after the psychological shock. Looking at the phone screen marking past 6 in the morning, she told herself that all those terrifying scenes just now were merely illusions from a dream. Despite trying to act strong, the bewilderment was still clearly visible on the pale face of the little girl as she sat quietly alone. DOA looked around the empty room in a daze, silently hoping Seongwoo's silhouette would appear but only seeing an overwhelming emptiness. In the middle of the tranquil kitchen space, she sat huddled on the high chair and clearly felt the solitude enveloping her soul. Pain surged up as she bitterly realized her lover truly had not come home, and there was absolutely no message at all. Just as her teary eyes were about to close, a voice calling her name suddenly rang out, tearing through the quiet space, making DOA startle and look up. DOA looked up in shock at Seongwoo's silhouette just stepping out of the bathroom with a muscular body still drenched in water. His call echoed throughout the mezzanine space, startling the little girl out of her vague train of thought. Her eyes were still blurred with tears when looking at him, her mouth softly uttering her lover's name chokingly, as if having just found her anchor again. Seongwoo gently used a towel to dry his wet hair, flashing a tender smile, asking if she had just woken up. In the middle of the cozy kitchen, he explained that he had returned a long time ago and asked if DOA had accidentally fallen asleep right at the dining table. While busy cleaning up, he recounted the incident when the co-worker on the last shift suddenly quit, leaving him in an awkward situation. He mentioned that he had to close the bar by himself, so the work dragged on until late at night like that. In the shadows of her mind, DOA suddenly saw the image of Saran apologizing for being late flashback, sowing doubt into her lover's explanation. That girl's calculating, mysterious smile seemed to still be lurking somewhere, challenging DOA's fragile trust. Despite a heart full of lingering worries, DOA merely muttered softly that it wasn't his fault anyway. Watching Seongwoo getting water, DOA softly whispered that he must be very tired after a long night of work. He gave a slight nod of admission and reminded her that he had to leave at 11 o'clock, suggesting they should enjoy the short time remaining. DOA fell blankly into her own train of thought, silently wondering if she was being too sensitive to be constantly obsessed by the strange dream earlier. Suddenly, a loud and clear shout calling Han DOA's name rang out, making the little girl jolt and snap out of her stupor. Seeing his girlfriend looking somewhat absent-minded, Seongwoo caringly asked what she was so engrossed in thinking about to be that dazed. He brought his face close, anxiously asking if she was sick, but DOA just awkwardly denied it and affirmed she was still perfectly healthy. The upperclassman unexpectedly asked her to wrap her arms around his neck, leaving DOA bewildered by this very sudden initiative. In a split second, a powerful lifting force hoisted her tiny body off the floor, creating a highly unexpected drop sensation. Seongwoo proudly scooped her up, flashing a radiant smile upon seeing his little girlfriend holding tightly onto him in shock. With a face blushing from shyness, DOA softly reproached his sudden action for startling her, but deep down she was extremely happy. The passionate kiss amidst the peaceful morning marked the intimate moment both had been longing for. Seongwoo leaned close to her ear, seductively whispering that since they didn't have much time left, they couldn't afford to waste it. Looking into DOA's flustered eyes, he softly urged her to join him in fully enjoying the last few minutes before he had to leave. The upperclassman strongly scooped the little girl up, taking decisive strides toward the bed in shy consensus. The space suddenly became quiet, leaving only hastily discarded clothes scattered on the cold floor. While resting, DOA restlessly checked the time, but Seongwoo instantly reassured her that they still had enough time for each other. Her eyes stopped on the vibrating phone, silently feeling pity for her lover as the burden of work must have drained his energy. The alarm ringtone suddenly blared piercingly, tearing through the peaceful atmosphere, causing the little girl to startle and panic. She quickly turned off that sound and breathed a sigh of relief, silently telling herself that he must have forgotten to turn it off before dozing off. Watching Seongwoo sinking deep into a sound sleep after a string of strenuous days, DOA sat blankly beside him, with eyes full of compassion. DOA recalled the upperclassman's reminder that she absolutely must wake him up when she was about to leave. She hesitantly swallowed her saliva in full tension, an intention beyond her control suddenly arising in her mind. With a rapidly beating heart, she tremblingly picked up her lover's phone and began trying to enter the passcode. DOA's eyes widened in hesitation upon realizing the upperclassman still kept the same old password like an unchanged habit. She sat quietly in the dark, enveloped by guilt as she was stealthily invading his private secrets. Under the dim light from the screen, she started checking the chat list and stopped upon seeing the name CO Saran appear. Her heart tightened when she discovered a voice call from that beautiful upperclassman sent in the middle of the night. But after carefully reading the one-sided, whiny text messages, she suddenly realized Saran was the one always proactively clinging to him. All suspicions vanished, making DOA breathe a sigh of relief, silently mocking herself for being overly sensitive and baselessly paranoid. She gently reached out to stroke her lover's hair, her heart filled with regret for not placing her absolute trust in him. DOA sat quietly beside the soundly sleeping Seongwoo, her heart heavy with unease as she told herself that their relationship seemingly remained unchanged since they started dating. The scene shifted to the project room full of equipment, where anxious inquiries rang out upon realizing DOA was running a very high fever amidst a pile of work. Looking at the little girl lying tiredly with flushed cheeks, the person opposite her softly chided that she should have informed them earlier about her illness to rest, making DOA just mutter a weak apology. In the quiet space of the studio, she hesitantly mentioned the upcoming work deadline and advised him not to waste time taking care of her, but he still tenderly affirmed she didn't need to worry. With a radiant smile and sincere eyes, Seongwoo blamed himself for making her travel so hard while sick like that and affirmed everything was fine. Gently stroking his girlfriend's burning face, he promised to call a taxi to take her home as soon as the rain outside the window let up, leaving DOA to just silently accept his care. Lying on the long sofa under his devoted care, DOA weakly whispered that she truly didn't know the reason why he suddenly treated her so well like this. Seongwoo's face suddenly became serious and pensive. He looked deep into her eyes, then pressed to know what she actually implied with what she just said. DOA turned her face away evasively, painfully confessing that his excessive kindness sometimes made her unable to stop herself from harboring unwarranted negative thoughts. Her flustered hands tightly gripped the blanket upon hearing him softly tease whether he was making her feel uncomfortable, even though her expression completely betrayed her wildly beating heart. Seongwoo's hand tightly squeezed DOA's shoulder, as if to affirm that no matter how turbulent her emotions were at this moment, he would still resolutely continue to treat her well, and wondered if he actually needed some justifiable reason to protect his lover that much. Meanwhile, DOA could only silently bow her head with a sad face, telling herself that perhaps all the arising insecurity was only because yesterday's timing was too bad. Looking at the sturdy back of the soundly sleeping man, she was moved to realize that no matter how busy he was, he always tried to spend all his free time with her. A surge of regret made DOA silently send a sincere apology for accidentally harboring baseless suspicions that affected their feelings. But when her hand lightly touched his bare skin, she suddenly stopped in sheer astonishment upon seeing a strange long red mark appear right on Seongwoo's back. The little girl's eyes widened in utmost shock, her mind endlessly repeating the question of why such distinct scratch marks appeared on his body. Back to reality at the lecture hall, DOA blankly looked at her own hands with their always shortly trimmed nails right when her best friend invited her to join a story writing contest. Hearing the excited invitation about the contest she inherently loved, she could only awkwardly ask her friend to send the link while her mind was still besieged by doubt. Her fingers intertwined in deep unease, hiding her extreme anxiety over the dark secret just discovered behind her lover's perfect facade. DOA turned to ask Chaeyoung if she was interested, but only received an indifferent answer that her friend was just joining for fun and didn't hope to win. Suddenly, DOA's eyes widened in utter shock upon accidentally seeing a shocking piece of information pop up right on the phone screen in front of her. It was a curious question about whether Seo Saran already had a boyfriend, accompanied by a photo of her smiling radiantly next to a mysterious man with a covered face. Netizens' attention poured into the luxury watch on the male lead's wrist, accompanied by exclamations that its value was equal to a house deposit. DOA's face suddenly became completely bloodless, as the suspicion arose whether Saran had actually gone to her lover's bar yesterday. The alluring image of Saran intertwined with the setting of Seongwoo's workplace created a terrifying coincidence, making her unable to stop doubting her own imagination. While everyone endlessly praised the bar's luxurious atmosphere and asserted that a lady like Saran must definitely be dating a high-class tycoon, DOA walked soullessly down the empty hallway, trying to reassure herself that all bars had the same style, but the posted time frame kept haunting her mind. The entire Daewon University campus appeared tranquil under the sky, a place hiding complex relationships and budding secrets that could shatter the peace. Wandering alone in the vast schoolyard, DOA told herself that even if Saran had gone there, this morning's messages still showed Seongwoo was intentionally avoiding her. Despite trying to tell herself that Saran going to the bar wasn't necessarily because of Seongwoo, the unease still enveloped her, making DOA's heart tighten. And above all, a bad premonition just flashed by, making her eyes dilate in shock at the reality about to unfold. The loud and clear calling of Han DOA's name rang out, forcing her to stop in her tracks and stand stunned upon seeing her lover walking alongside that haughty lady. With her arms crossed confidently, Saran casually asked if the upperclassmen knew this girl from the same department, acting as a vicious psychological blow. A calculating smile clearly appeared on her lips as she firmly asserted that she had known DOA very well for a long time. Seongwoo suddenly flashed a seductive smile and uttered an indifferent greeting as if they hadn't seen each other in a long time to deceive the public eye. Standing before the overly perfect social charade of the person she trusted the most, DOA could only stand transfixed with a pale face and tear-filled eyes. The upperclassman casually took out his phone to check with a cold, emotionless face, completely ignoring the atmosphere that was becoming suffocatingly tense. Looking at DOA standing alone in the middle of the schoolyard from the perspective of a winner, the little girl's silhouette appeared truly faint and pitiful. A smug smile appeared on Saran's face, marking the beginning of a cruel scheme aimed straight at her old friend's fragile heart. From a high-angle view, The geographical distance between DOA and that couple manifested the distance in soul she was having to endure. The university space suddenly became suffocating under the pale sky, signaling the impending storms about to hit. Saran spoke up to fake ask about DOA's next destination, while Seongwoo maintained his indifferent look like an completely unrelated stranger. Witnessing Saran clinging to her lover so intimately, DOA could only stand rooted to the spot with a broken heart due to the ambiguity unfolding right before her eyes. The lady casually waved goodbye to both of them with a triumphant smile, leaving behind a numbingly awkward atmosphere. Trying to cling to reality by reminding herself of the upcoming class at Building B, but her trembling hands completely betrayed DOA's composure. Seongwoo softly excused himself to leave, not forgetting to reply to Saran's promise to reach out soon with a highly accommodating attitude. The back of the man she once trusted gradually faded away without a single glance back, leaving DOA standing alone in sheer bewilderment. The choking pain made her bite her lip tightly to stop the tears from bursting out, clearly feeling the collapse of a long-held trust. Where will everything head to when the very first cracks have officially been exposed under the vicious orchestration of a third party? Saran unexpectedly called Han DOA's name and proactively brought up the promise to treat her to a meal in return for an old favor. With a meaningful smile, the lady casually suggested they should go out for dinner together this very evening. Standing in the middle of the vast schoolyard, Saran continued to press with a question about her free time, throwing DOA into a state of extreme confusion. Daewon University's space appeared tranquil under the blue sky, but underneath it was simmering with hidden undercurrents. Walking alone down the hallway, the little girl endlessly wondered what trick the other person was actually trying to pull by acting like that. In DOA's mind suddenly flashed the image of Saran boldly approaching Seongwoo, deepening her suspicion even more. Recalling that fake greeting tone from earlier, she felt extreme discomfort creeping in and taking over her entire mind. DOA stared blankly at the phone screen with sorrowful eyes, trying to find a bit of peace in the old text messages. The teasing from her lover about her having the nerve to wear a shirt to school made her small heart suddenly tighten with fear. Her trembling hands tightly gripping the phone, DOA bitterly affirmed that Seo Saran was indeed the root cause of all troubles. DOA bitterly realized that while the upperclassman was trying to draw a clear boundary, that lady kept shamelessly clinging to him one-sidedly. It was because of that persistent clinging that vicious rumors kept spreading widely across the school, yet Seongwoo himself maintained an unusually calm demeanor. Looking at the phone screen with tear-filled eyes, DOA blamed herself for letting these trivial things shake her mind and make her so weak. After a moment of hesitation in the empty hallway, the little girl suddenly clenched her fists in determination, having made an important decision for herself. Gently wiping away her tears, DOA resolved to directly face tonight's date to clarify exactly what Seo Saran was plotting. Suddenly, a loud shout tore through the quiet atmosphere, making DOA jolt when seeing a male student in a yellow shirt gleefully waving hello. The unexpected shock caused the little girl's pupils to dilate in panic, the not yet dry tears still lingering on her eyelashes. Panting from fear, DOA silently complained in her heart that this guy's booming voice really scared the living daylights out of her. Seeing the other person stare blankly at him, that guy hurriedly and awkwardly asked if she was okay, then let out a bitter laugh upon realizing he had probably stared too much. A hasty apology rang out accompanied by awkward steps backing away, concluding the highly awkward situation right in the middle of the school hallway. A male student unexpectedly reminded DOA to look straight ahead because there was someone standing right behind her, making the little girl startle in the midst of a rush. A surge of guilt welled up when she accidentally spilled her coffee on the person opposite her, making DOA exclaim in sheer remorse for her own clumsiness. Seeing Eunho's face darken along with a splotchy stain on his shirt, she frantically screamed an apology, while the guy could only stand frozen in extreme annoyance. While his accompanying friend kept teasing about this ironic situation, DOA hastily pulled out tissues to wipe the stain and promised to compensate for all damages. Eunho coldly refused the compensation offer and brushed her hand away, forced to ask to borrow a spare shirt from his friend named Hangil. The harsh reply that he didn't bring a change of clothes today instantly turned the atmosphere silent and extremely tense among the three of them. Eunho slightly turned his head with a sharp, pensive gaze, seemingly having to suppress his rage at the little girl's unbelievable clumsiness. With no other choice, DOA took a risk and took off the outer dress shirt she was wearing, earnestly offering him to wear it temporarily, since a men's size would definitely fit. She stuttered out a promise that after compensating for the shirt, she would wash it clean and treat him to another coffee, leaving both guys in a state of bewilderment. DOA silently reassured herself that this shirt was thin and light so it wouldn't cause heat, but her heart was full of fear, not knowing if Seongwoo would understand this ironic situation. DOA suddenly stopped in utter bewilderment, unable to foresee the other person's next action in this ironic situation. She was shocked to witness Eunho casually take off his stained shirt right in the middle of the hallway, exposing his muscular body before many gazes. With her eyes rolling back and screaming in her heart, DOA wondered if this cold guy was actually crazy. Before this out-of-control boldness, she could only frantically cover her face, feeling embarrassed on behalf of the one showing off. Eunho maintained a terrifyingly calm face, decisively making strong movements to escape the dirty shirt. Without a single word of warning, he straight up threw the item at DOA like an authoritative order, forcing her to take responsibility. The shirt flew straight into her face, making her clumsily catch it in shock, her ears still ringing with his demand that she wash it clean and return it to him. After neatly adjusting his new outfit, Eunho casually turned his back and walked away without bothering to look back even once. The accompanying friends' amused laughter echoed throughout the space, further adding to the humiliation of the little girl standing all alone. DOA stood silently watching the two retreating backs gradually fade away, silently resenting the cruel fate that had pushed her into this ironic predicament. DOA stood silently watching Eunho's retreating back, her hands still tightly hugging the stained shirt, silently surprised to realize a cold person like him also had close friends. She told herself not to worry too much, but just behave nicely to avoid bringing trouble upon herself, even though his expression looked really hard to please, as if he had a diva complex. On the other side of the hallway, Eunho's group of friends kept mocking his arbitrary shirt-removing action while the guy could only sullenly justify that there was no one around at that time. Hangil suddenly showed great interest and praised the cute appearance of the girl they just met, making Eunho only respond with a highly disgusted click of his tongue. With a stern face and a sharp gaze, Eunho coldly issued a firm warning that it was best his friend not be curious or get involved with that girl. Facing Hangil's highly curious inquiry about a shady relationship that might exist, Eunho only chose absolute silence, with an incredibly unpredictable expression. The atmosphere suddenly changed when Eunho's gaze accidentally caught the silhouette of upperclassman Seongwoo standing waiting at the end of the hallway. Appearing right before his eyes was the radiant, mesmerizing smile of the perfect man, but it seemed behind it lay a silent antagonism. Hangil excitedly waved hello, while Seongwoo also responded with a very friendly attitude, creating a highly natural social interaction in front of everyone. The truth about the two of them frequently bumping into each other lately left the accompanying friend in awe, despite Eunho clearly showing utmost hatred and demanding the upperclassmen never strike up a conversation with him again. Seongwoo proactively struck up a conversation, assuming the two of them seemed very fated, constantly bumping into each other accidentally, making Eunho mutter sarcastically about the guy who always showed up at the wrong time. Hangil laughed heartily while affirming Eunho was actually very interesting due to his excessive seriousness, just as Seongwoo curiously asked about the start of the relationship between the two of them. With a welcoming attitude, Hangil excitedly revealed both were former comrades from their military days, and they themselves were extremely surprised to discover they attended the same university. Seongwoo flashed a gentle smile, expressing admiration for Eunho's rare loyalty and feeling glad that the two of them had become good friends. Before those glowing compliments, Eunho's eyes suddenly narrowed in high vigilance, brewing extreme suspicion about the true underlying meanings. The departmental friend group took the opportunity to bombard Seongwoo with questions about his free time for a drinking gathering and received a promise to arrange it soon from him. Hangil excitedly cheered in thanks while Seongwoo amiably reminded them both to get home safe, creating a highly natural social interaction in front of everyone. Before leaving, Seongwoo did not forget to smile and wave goodbye to Eunho with a highly accommodating attitude, as if he had a hold on him. He suddenly pressed close and whispered threateningly that the shirt on Eunho looked very familiar, then pressed to ask if he had asked for its owner's permission yet. The upperclassman decisively strode away with a highly proud demeanor, leaving a tense atmosphere enveloping Eunho after the secret was exposed. Hangil turned to pressingly ask what the upperclassmen had said that made Eunho silently endure such a terrible feeling. The university scene appeared from above along with suggestive words about the dirty deeds happening everywhere. The image of Seongwoo casually standing next to Saran while still keeping his eyes glued to his phone acted as an affirmation for the unresolved ambiguities. DOA stood frozen from behind, her heart heavy with disappointment as she bitterly labeled the other person a piece of trash. Eunho's gaze suddenly turned sharp, containing utmost fury at the excessively arrogant challenge from the person opposite him. Eunho stomped away with the intention of wanting to burn the shirt he was wearing, ignoring Hangil, who was bewildered and didn't understand the reason for the sudden temper. The sunset sunlight enveloped the bustling city just as the call of DOA's name rang out, signaling a highly turbulent encounter. Saran flashed a radiantly confident smile, gleefully waving to welcome the little girl approaching her to start the dinner according to plan. Facing the haughty lady, DOA's face clearly showed tension and unconcealable anxiety before the unpredictable calculations. Saran flashed a radiant smile and complimented DOA on how well the outfit suited her, catching the cautious girl off guard as she had expected to be given a hard time right away. At Saran's offer to try on more clothes, DOA stood frozen in the white dress, secretly wondering if she was trying to mock her poverty or pry into her boyfriend's identity. DOA's face turned pale, and she was sweating from nerves, even though she had mentally prepared herself beforehand to face any humiliating tricks from her old friend. Saran flashed a radiant smile and complimented DOA on how well the outfit suited her, catching the cautious girl off guard as she had expected to be given a hard time right away. At Saran's offer to try on more clothes, DOA stood frozen in the white dress, secretly wondering if she was trying to mock her poverty or pry into her boyfriend's identity. DOA's face turned pale, and she was sweating from nerves, even though she had mentally prepared herself beforehand to face any humiliating tricks from her old friend. Watching Saran casually pick out clothes in the luxurious atmosphere of the fashion boutique, DOA still couldn't figure out the true intention behind this unusually kind behavior. Memories flashed back to 2 hours prior, when the crimson sunset began to blanket the city's bustling streets. From a distance, a sharp voice calling DOA's name shattered the quiet, causing the girl lugging a shabby backpack to startle and turn around. Saran stood there waving enthusiastically, gesturing with an incredibly friendly expression for DOA to hurry over. Saran's radiant appearance drew the eyes of every passerby, while DOA could only awkwardly explain that she had just taken the subway to their meeting point. Looking at her own scruffy appearance and an old t-shirt, DOA deeply regretted not changing before meeting a fancy socialite like Saran. The official meetup began when Saran announced she had made a restaurant reservation, but since they had over 2 hours to kill, she decided to spend that time giving her friend a makeover. Dragging DOA into a luxury hair salon, Saran boldly demanded the staff give her friend a very soft and natural look. Not stopping there, the two continued to a bakery, and Saran excitedly urged DOA to taste the store's best-selling item. An intimate selfie was taken as if to prove a perfect friendship, even though DOA's mind was actually in complete turmoil. The streets lit up brightly as the clock ticked by, marking 2 agonizing hours that DOA had to endure the other girl's control. Standing silently in the fitting room with a new dress, she wondered why Saran was suddenly treating her so well after all those years of hatred. Memories of their school days suddenly flashed back with images of the two as close friends, sharing a desk and every joy and sorrow under the school roof. DOA's hands gripped the coat hanger tightly as she remembered the moment their friendship shattered without explanation, secretly wondering if this meeting was to erase all the past grudges. Saran suddenly pulled back the fitting room curtain, making DOA startle and freeze in the white dress she hadn't even finished adjusting. Flashing a radiant smile, Saran casually said that the dress seemed hard to take off, so she came in to lend a hand, simultaneously holding out another pre-selected outfit. Without waiting for her to agree, the rich girl ordered DOA to turn around so she could easily manage, ignoring her friend's bewilderment and awkwardness. While letting Saran touch her body, DOA silently reassured herself that her suspicions about her boyfriend were probably just due to her being overly sensitive at the wrong time. However, an uncomfortable feeling began to take over as Saran's hands slowly untied the bow on the back of DOA's dress. DOA frowned in annoyance, secretly complaining that Saran had absolutely no concept of personal boundaries as she just invaded her private space like that. Her confusion reached its peak when DOA felt physical contact that was far more intimate than necessary, causing her eyes to widen in horror. Saran suddenly reached out and forcefully touched DOA's chest, then blurted out an indecent compliment about her friend's body size. Leaning close to DOA's ear with a suggestive look, she even added a sarcastic remark that she almost thought DOA had gone under the knife. Too shocked by the harassment, DOA shouted in protest, only to receive Saran's mocking laugh and the assertion that since they were both girls, there was no need to overreact. DOA stood frozen in disbelief, her eyes clearly showing disgust and shock after the other girl's recent indecent remarks. Saran nonchalantly closed the curtain and made a mocking remark about DOA's oversensitivity, not forgetting to remind her that she absolutely had to try on the outfit she had chosen. Darkness enveloped the fitting room, making DOA's face pale with fear. She trembled and clutched her collar as if seeking a shred of safety. During the dinner, a sharp knife sliced through the meat, causing the dark red sauce to ooze out, prompting DOA to wonder if she was just overthinking things. Sitting across from each other in the high-end restaurant space shimmering with city lights, Saran's kindness only made DOA's heart clench tighter with anxiety. Saran rested her chin on her hand, observing every tiny expression on the other girl's face with calculating eyes, as if enjoying a good play. That intense stare made DOA feel demeaned, no different from a tiny toy being held captive in the palm of a powerful person. Saran continued to break the silence by suggesting DOA should order whatever else she liked because this place was very famous. DOA hesitantly looked at Saran, who sat smiling with crossed arms without touching her food. She gathered all her courage to call out the other girl's name to seek the truth. Looking at the elaborate, beautifully arranged dishes of food in front of her, a feeling of insecurity surged in DOA's heart as she thought she didn't deserve all this special treatment. Saran casually raised her wine glass, forcing DOA to accept this treat by claiming the money was nothing to her. DOA slightly bowed her head and hesitantly replied that things were crossing the line, and she firmly wanted to pay for her own share to keep a shred of self-respect. The sparkling chandelier in the luxurious restaurant space seemed to embellish Saran's suggestive reminder of the days when the two used to be close. The image of them both in their school uniforms flashed back like a sad movie scene, accompanied by Saran's sarcastic question of whether that was a good time or not. DOA's face suddenly went blank as she silently questioned herself about the concept of a fun time that the other girl had just mentioned so lightly. Everything turned upside down in the young girl's mind as she tried to find the answer to the sudden change and the true purpose behind this highly forced meeting. Saran lightly touched her chin, feigning thought, then used the name of an old friend to start dispensing humiliating advice aimed straight at DOA. She coldly told DOA that she should know how to invest more in her appearance instead of forever keeping her current shabby look. Amidst the solemn cityscape, a cruel warning continued to echo about a humiliating future if DOA refused to change according to the other girl's wishes. Saran smirked, delivering a psychological finishing blow by asserting that if she stayed like this forever, even that perfect boyfriend of hers would feel ashamed and wouldn't dare acknowledge her in front of others. Saran bluntly mocked whether it was because of poverty that DOA couldn't take care of herself, making her just bow her head and endure the surging humiliation. She continued to play the victim by complaining that her kindness was met with a hurtful attitude, ignoring DOA's eyes that were beginning to blur with resentment. Her triumph was evident when Saran retorted, asking who else besides herself would be willing to help a desperate person, and then suddenly threw out an attack about the mysterious boyfriend's shame. The question of why Saran knew about the existence of this intimate relationship continuously tortured DOA's mind, creating a deep gulf of suspicion between the two. The magnificent chandelier shone in the quiet space, as if witnessing the collapse of the secrets DOA had worked so hard to hide all this time. The atmosphere in the luxury restaurant suddenly became suffocating when the name Seo Saran was mentioned once again like a terrifying obsession. Slashing her knife hard into the meat as if to release the pressure, DOA coldly affirmed that she had never revealed having a boyfriend to anyone at school. Holding her head high to face her enemy, DOA pressed in a resolute voice to find out who was behind leaking her personal information to Saran. DOA's eyes widened in utter astonishment upon receiving a contemptuous scoff from the opposite side, signaling a malicious prank about to be exposed. Saran couldn't hold back and burst into laughter. She covered her mouth while mocking DOA's naivety, claiming she looked truly ridiculous right now. Saran casually glossed over it, saying the recent sarcasm was just an illustrative example, and scolded DOA for taking the matter too seriously. Bewilderment was evident on DOA's face as she began to doubt the true purpose behind the other girl's gifts and fake kindness. Distant memories being brought back up threw the young girl's mind into chaos amidst suggestive words that seemed to want to swallow up her present peace. Fear surged as she asked herself how Saran could hold the secret about the boyfriend she had never revealed to anyone at school. The vague image of her lover appeared, causing DOA to raise doubts about whether a traitor had secretly sold out her personal information. The peak of despair was when she formed the worst speculation that the very man she always trusted had personally told that woman everything. Amidst the lavish restaurant space, her heart pounding repeatedly as if trying to burst from her chest made DOA feel suffocated in the oppressive silence. Her eyes widened in panic at the harsh reality, trying to fight back against the cruel psychological attack from the other side. Saran's leisurely hand-clasping gesture and unhurried demeanor at the dining table acted as a firm confirmation of a winner's stance. A bout of dizziness hit when the image of bright red scratch marks on her lover's back appeared once again, officially marking the collapse of the last shred of trust in DOA's heart. DOA began to be besieged by horrific imaginary images of intimacy between Seongwoo and Saran in the past. Her eyes widened in obsession as her mind relentlessly repeated cruel doubts about her current lover's fidelity. A forceful knife cut down into the steak caused the dark red sauce to gush out, like a testament to a deeply painful reality she had to face. The feeling of collapse made DOA feel like going crazy. She sat in a daze amidst the luxurious space, her heart filled with extreme panic. A sudden notification sound from a phone interrupted her train of thought, causing Saran's hands holding the wine glass to pause as well. Saran checked the notification and then pretended to suddenly remember an extremely important matter she had accidentally forgotten. She casually stood up, asking to be excused early to make it in time for a family gathering, bringing the high-pressure date to a swift end. Before walking away, Saran reached out and handed DOA a red paper bag, asserting that this was the gift she had gone out of her way to buy for her earlier. She also smiled and spoke with complete hypocrisy, saying she felt DOA really needed this item, while not forgetting to tell her to eat comfortably and get home safely. The magnificent restaurant setting suddenly turned cold as Saran turned her back and walked away, leaving DOA all alone to face the pain gnawing at her soul. Saran's dark red paper bag lay silently on the table, containing a suggestive gift that DOA couldn't possibly ignore. Alone in the quiet restaurant, DOA stared in dismay at the brilliant red gift box, the other girl's sarcastic words still echoing in her ears. Trembling hands gently untied the red ribbon, DOA's mind surging with a terrifying unease about what was about to be revealed. The dry sound of the box opening echoed, leaving the young girl so stunned she couldn't believe what was happening right before her eyes. DOA's face suddenly turned pale and drenched in sweat at the highly cunning psychological attack from her former bully. The city at night was immersed in illusory, shimmering lights, hiding the cruel schemes that were being secretly executed. Crowds of people casually walked the streets, completely unaware of the emotional storm preparing to sweep away her last shred of hope. In the gloomy darkness, Seongwoo took a long drag on a cigarette with calculating eyes, as if concealing a ruthless betrayal. Everything officially spiraled out of control when the Instagram post about the intimate date surfaced, dragging DOA into a public opinion trap with no way out. Seongwoo looked at his phone screen with a thoughtful expression, secretly asking himself what on earth had made DOA's attitude change so strangely lately. Standing outside the bar, a co-worker curiously asked about DOA's absence, leaving him to thoughtfully confirm that she wouldn't be coming today. He suddenly changed his demeanor and asked his associate if they had seen any phone left behind in the shop, creating a confusing suspicion. Faced with the co-worker's bewilderment upon seeing his own phone still in his hand, Seongwoo maintained an emotionless face as he waited for an answer. He casually explained that he was just helping a customer find a lost item, but the gaze that swept past contained an underlying danger. Slightly smirking with a piercingly cold look, He secretly planned to clean up the mess himself if he happened to come across that mysterious item. The decisive flick of a cigarette in the night seemed to signal a cruel decision about to be executed. The burning cigarette fell straight onto the social media photo of Saran and DOA together, acting as a bitter warning of the wrath being kindled. Under the cold heel of his shoe, the cigarette but was crushed along with the assertion that it was time for him to return home to settle everything once and for all. The city sank into a melancholic darkness as the silent high-rise buildings witnessed the unsalvageable rift of the school couple. The lone shoe lay rolling on the dark floor, hinting at the highly turbulent and disoriented mood of its owner. In the middle of the deserted hallway, DOA sat alone, hugging her knees in front of the large glass door, letting the darkness of the black night envelop her small body. The dark red paper bag lay right next to her as a cruel reminder of Saran's highly cunning manipulative schemes. The ultimate pain made DOA frantically mess up her hair, trying to chase away the images of betrayal that were suffocating her mind. Burying her face in her hands, the young girl helplessly let her tears of sorrow fall in the terrifying silence of the house. The surging despair made DOA seem to lack the strength to face the harsh realities surrounding her. In a panic, she clutched her head tightly and trembled violently, as if wanting to escape the cruel psychological trap the other girl had set. DOA's eyes became vacant from the massive shock, her long-held trust completely collapsing before the heartbreaking truths that had just been exposed. Just as her soul was on the verge of collapse, a tall figure suddenly appeared and began entering the passcode to open the door. The dry sound of the door lock echoed, signaling the appearance of a new character, opening a highly dramatic page for this confrontation. DOA startled and blurted out Seongwoo's name when she saw him suddenly appear at the door, awkwardly asking why he came without letting her know in advance. Seongwoo stood under the hallway light with a calm face, his eyes seemingly observing every tiniest expression of his lover in secret. To break the silence, DOA confusingly explained that she had just gone for a hair trim and hoped he would like this small change. Approaching with a suggestive smile, Seongwoo curiously pressed to ask the reason why her face had become so unusually serious. He casually turned on the light and said he took the chance to visit his lover when he had some free time, simultaneously praising her fresh look. His eyes were still filled with gentleness, but also full of sharpness, making DOA feel pressured when facing the others in sight. Gathering all her courage, DOA stood up straight in front of Seongwoo and hesitantly said she had a secret that needed to be honestly confessed. Seongwoo gently interrupted to reassure her that he firmly believed it was just an unexpected emergency and nothing was a big deal. He gave a slight, amused smirk when mentioning that she had lent her shirt to someone else, as if he had understood the whole situation beforehand. With an apologetic face, DOA confessed about the collision that spilled coffee on Eunho and how she had to lend him the button-down shirt she was wearing. Seongwoo showed displeasure and admitted he didn't feel comfortable about it at all, making DOA hurriedly apologize for not discussing it beforehand and promising to buy an identical shirt as compensation. Seeing Seongwoo make a serious face, saying the shirt was extremely expensive, DOA turned pale with worry and tremblingly asked what the real price was. However, the guy quickly revealed the prank by disclosing the shirt was only 30,000 won bought at an underground shopping mall, making DOA startled to the point of crying from being scared. Even though it was just a tease, Seongwoo still reached out to lightly touch DOA's nose and seriously warned her absolutely never to lend her boyfriend's clothes to another man. Faced with her lover's possessiveness, DOA could only blankly nod and mumble an apology as a habit to soothe the tense atmosphere. Seongwoo slightly narrowed his eyes in suspicion as he sensed the abnormality in every gesture and the distant look of the girl opposite him. In the quiet space of the kitchen, he hurriedly corrected that he wasn't mad at all and pressed to ask why DOA had such a serious reaction. Seongwoo considerately reached out to pat his lover's head and worriedly asked if she was feeling unwell today. Suddenly, DOA reached out and tightly grabbed his wrist to stop the intimate contact, her eyes clearly showing a forced evasiveness. DOA quickly let go and avoided Seongwoo's gaze, using fatigue as an excuse to end the conversation, even though her heart was still churning with doubts. Seongwoo looked intently at DOA, and then softly called her name with a highly serious look as if preparing for a new plan. He gently suggested they should go on a date, since it had been a long time since they had private time for each other under the sparkling night sky. The couple's stopping place was Cinema 1 to 5, where the dim lights created a highly private space. They both sat in the pitch-black screening room, amidst the empty rows of seats that made the atmosphere even more suffocating and tense. DOA's face clearly showed absent-mindedness as she tried to suppress the insecurities swirling deep within her. Seongwoo silently observed his lover's weird expressions, secretly wondering if that woman had a hand in making her so unstable. He leaned close to DOA's ear and whispered, asking if she knew the movie they were watching was rated very poorly by critics. Upon hearing Seongwoo say the movie was really bad, DOA bewilderingly asked back the reason why he still wanted to bring her here to watch it. Suddenly, Seongwoo reached out and tightly intertwined his fingers with DOA's small hand, lightly placing a kiss on it to express his silent possessiveness. He gave a mesmerizing smile and asserted that the real purpose of going to the movies was just to have the chance to hold her hand for a long time like this. DOA worriedly asked if anyone saw them, making Seongwoo casually ask back who could possibly see them in the theater right now. He asserted that no one was free enough to go watch a terribly rated movie at this late hour to dispel her fears. DOA secretly glanced at her lover with highly insecure eyes, the tension clearly showing on the young girl's sweaty face. She could only keep silent and bow her head to avoid him, trying to control her wildly beating heart in the face of such close contact. Seongwoo smirked with a highly mysterious smile. It seemed he was extremely enjoying having a grasp on his lover's expressions. He reached out to gently lift DOA's head and pressed to ask if she was tormenting herself with unreal imaginations. Stepping out of the movie theater, DOA admitted she didn't remember anything about the plot and reminded Seongwoo not to repeat such intimate actions again. The guy smiled radiantly and confessed that her flustered reaction was so adorable it made him want to tease her for the rest of his life. DOA suddenly stopped in her tracks upon hearing Seongwoo mention they would live together under one roof even after he graduated from college. In the middle of the quiet campus at night, Seongwoo softly called DOA's name, as if wanting to wake her from her vague train of thought about their future. DOA looked straight into Seongwoo's eyes and chokingly pressed to ask what about her had truly made a perfect person like him fall in love. Seongwoo's gaze slightly shifted in sheer surprise at his lover's overly sudden question. He silently wondered why she cared about that right now. Standing in the middle of the quiet campus, DOA expressed her long-held doubt, believing that him actively confessing to a plain girl like her was incredibly hard to believe. Deep down, she always felt an inferiority complex when comparing herself to a Seongwoo who was always the center of attention and surrounded by everyone. Lightly putting a hand to his chin in thought, Seongwoo recalled their first meeting at the club and admitted he was completely won over by her dedication to her work. DOA was stunned hearing him list her good points, from her kind personality traits to even her physical attractiveness, making her unavoidably blush in embarrassment. Noticing her unstable expression, Seongwoo stepped closer, held DOA's shoulders tightly, and seriously pressed for the reason that made her suddenly act so strangely. His hands tightened slightly, as if wanting to dispel all distance. Seongwoo considerately asked if his own thoughtlessness had made her feel insecure in this relationship. He suddenly pulled DOA into his arms in a tight hug, earnestly asserting that his feelings were sincere and hoping she would continue to trust him until the day he graduated. Resting her head on his warm shoulder, DOA smiled through her tears and softly returned his loving words, temporarily brushing aside all doubts about Saran to enjoy the happy moment beside the one she loved. DOA stood frozen, staring at Saran's dark red gift box, her mind still echoing with the highly suggestive words. She tremblingly opened the box lid, a dry rattling sound echoing as if signaling a cruel truth about to be exposed. Inside the box suddenly revealed a shiny black phone lying next to a set of lingerie, making DOA completely freeze in shock. Her eyes widened in terror as she realized this indecent gift was the exact painful, humiliating blow that Saran had meant for her. In the middle of the empty restaurant space, DOA bowed her head in humiliation before the pile of luxury items that contained the ultimate insult. Her trembling hands reached out as if guided by an invisible force, urging her to touch the thing lying inside. DOA picked up the unfamiliar phone, her heart surging with so many doubts about the true purpose of the cunning rich girl. The screen lit up requiring a passcode, becoming the final barrier between her and the secrets being hidden. Even though her heart was filled with fear, the intuition about her lover's betrayal made it impossible for her to stop. As if possessed by demons, DOA tried entering Seongwoo's password, and the phone instantly unlocked, officially exposing the whole dark truth. DOA was appalled when opening the photo gallery in the strange phone, a place harboring undeniable proofs of betrayal. It was a whole treasure trove of Seongwoo's dark secrets with countless intimate photos beside the cunning rich girl Saran. The luxury watch appearing in the photo was exactly the expensive item that netizens had once buzzed about regarding the owner's identity. The more she scrolled down, the more bitterly choked up DOA became seeing the scene of the two of them hugging hotly under the clear blue pool water. The carefully saved photos of Saran wearing seductive lingerie acted like a knife stabbing straight into the young girl's shattered self-esteem. The image of Seongwoo standing alone on the balcony in the dark night now only evoked a deceit and disgust to the point of shuddering. DOA tremblingly stopped at the fateful timestamp on the night of May 12, 2026, when the clock had struck near midnight. That was the exact day he promised to come home to be by her side, but it turned out to be the time he was immersed in the drunkenness of love with someone else. Darkness enveloped DOA's dazed, lifeless face, as she bitterly realized she was just a naive fool. The pain reached its peak when she read the text message where Seongwoo asserted to Saran that if he were to get married, that person could only be her. Seongwoo's solemn vows about a future living together after graduation now echoed in DOA's mind like a harsh requiem. She had once written diligently with the fragile hope that she could personally mold a happy ending for her own life full of scratches. The only reason she used to be passionate about words was the power to determine the destiny of characters, something she was now completely powerless over in reality. Standing silently by the fountain under the quiet night sky, DOA painfully realized that the dream of a perfect love was merely an illusion vanishing in the wind. A bitter smile appeared on her tear-stained face as she secretly blamed herself for being too foolish to bet all her trust on a liar. Traumatic childhood memories suddenly rushed back with the image of her mother preparing to leave home for work, marking the beginning of an eternal nightmare. The DOA of the past fearfully grabbed her mother's coat hem and earnestly begged her to stay home because she had an extremely unsettled premonition. Despite her daughter's pleas, the mother only left her last gentle instructions about going to school and promised to keep in touch if anything happened. In the blazing, fiery light from the doorway, DOA desperately screamed out for her mother as that familiar silhouette gradually vanished into nothingness. Now, there was only a lone little shadow left in the dark abyss of memories, where her cries for help were forever blocked by a fateful door that had closed. The DOA of the past trembled in tears. She chokingly called out for her mother amidst the melancholic darkness enveloping her mind. Her tiny hands took a risk and twisted the door open, a dry creaking sound echoing as if leading her to a harsh reality. Striking her eyes was the sight of her father arguing with a woman, as she harshly refused to take responsibility for the ex-wife's children. DOA's eyes turned dull in bewilderment when she suddenly realized that she and her younger brother had long become a burden being chased away. The father suddenly turned around with a hauntingly dark face, coldly pressing to ask when DOA had woken up and heard everything. A sly smile clearly showed on his face when mentioning the massive insurance compensation after her mother's tragic accident. A faint call of "sister" echoed, startling DOA awake from her dream. She painfully felt the fear spreading throughout her body. She hurriedly turned around and tightly hugged her younger brother Yoon in her arms, trying to protect her last pillar of support in a highly calculating world. The sound of the door slamming shut echoed like a cruel severance, pushing the two siblings into the abyss of loneliness and darkness. The instructions about a separate living place and a monthly allowance appeared so ironically, officially closing the final chapter of a broken family. DOA dazedly opened her eyes and bitterly realized that the entire tragedy she had just experienced was actually nothing but a cruel nightmare constantly haunting her. Memories of her grueling part-time jobs to protect her younger brother came flooding back, reminding her of the promise to always take good care of Yoon even though she was always engulfed in darkness. Looking at the family photo hanging on the wall, DOA silently urged her brother to just share all the hardships he was facing with her instead of enduring them alone. She fiercely rejected her brother's intention to be independent, fearing that Eun was still just a high school senior without enough strength to face life's storms. DOA asserted that she had finished paying his cram school tuition, despite Eun feeling incredibly guilty seeing his older sister having to put her studies on hold. With a sad smile, she comforted her brother that she could wait until the next semester to return to school in order to completely prioritize his future. Returning to reality, when she heard her boyfriend ask about her enrollment, DOA complained about the excessively long commute and the strict dormitory rules hindering her. Seongwoo playfully teased that despite the hardship, in return, she would have the chance to see her boyfriend more often. He unexpectedly offered for DOA to move in with him and assured her that his house already had everything she needed. Astonished to the point of being speechless, DOA tremblingly asked if he was truly serious and burst into happiness at Seongwoo's confirming nod. Seongwoo casually made the offer to live together, but DOA's hesitant reaction left him undeniably surprised and confused. Faced with that care, DOA could only bow her head in deep insecurity, confessing that she didn't want to become a burden holding back his future. Seongwoo sighed softly in disappointment, reproaching her and asking if deep down, DOA never actually wanted to be by his side as he had always hoped. Panicking at the misunderstanding, DOA gathered all her strength to shout aloud, affirming her desire to live together, which made Seongwoo jump at the terrifying volume. Everything was finally settled with a sweet agreement, causing Seongwoo to be unable to hide his triumphant smile, while DOA blushed bright red. Leaning close to her, Seongwoo gently whispered a promise that he would always be the one to shoulder all the hardships for the little girl he loved. That sincere confession made DOA's heart skip a beat. She distractedly immersed herself in the protection she had longed for all this time. Standing under the sparkling starry sky, DOA silently believed that as long as she had Seongwoo by her side, she would officially escape the terrifying nightmares of the past. But the teardrop rolling down her cheek betrayed that belief, as she choked up and questioned herself what on earth she had done wrong to be subjected to such cruelty. Seongwoo's silhouette suddenly turned cold with a sarcastic remark that she should know how to groom herself, because being next to someone as sloppy as her made him feel incredibly ashamed. Seongwoo's face suddenly turned sharp and cold with a ruthless declaration that if DOA were prettier, he would have never betrayed her. DOA jolted awake from the nightmare with tear-filled eyes, breathing heavily in extreme shock when faced with the pain of being deceived. Tears rolled down the little girl's pale face, serving as proof of a heart-shattering before a reality that was entirely too harsh. Seongwoo anxiously leaned over to check on her when he saw his girlfriend sobbing in her sleep, trying to soothe the panic engulfing her. In the dim darkness of the room, DOA choked back tears as she asked for the time and received a gentle instruction from him to just go back to sleep. Seongwoo's hand affectionately stroked his girlfriend's hair as a secret way of making amends, while quietly apologizing for accidentally waking her up. Yet deep within DOA's heart, a resolute rejection suddenly rang out like a fierce rebellion against all the existing lies. The image of the two siblings walking alone in the dark reappeared, along with a desperate scream that she absolutely did not want to accept this tragic ending. DOA stared at the sleeping face of the man next to her, silently declaring that the two of them absolutely could not just end like this. Doubt flared up once more as DOA reassured herself that those photos might just be fake, because she couldn't fully place her trust in the words of someone like Seo Saran. DOA decided to pretend she hadn't seen anything, trying hard to erase the evidence of betrayal from her mind to protect their love. She deluded herself that nothing had ever happened and silently begged Seongwoo to never leave her. Her arms tightly embracing her boyfriend in the dark was DOA's desperate attempt to hold onto a happiness that had begun to crack. The campus of Daewon University appeared tranquil under the early morning light, concealing the intense psychological turmoil of the young female student. Her solitary footsteps amidst the crowded throng made DOA feel her loneliness even more acutely as she had to bear such a massive secret all by herself. The laughter and chatter of the pretty female students around her inadvertently deepened the inferiority complex growing in her heart. DOA began agonizing over changing her appearance, secretly thinking she should wear makeup and dress more fashionably. However, that vain dream was quickly crushed by poverty, as she realized it was an unattainable luxury. Heading toward the lecture hall with a heavy heart, DOA still couldn't escape the vortex of low self-esteem and anxiety. Saran's cruel, sarcastic remarks about her destitution echoed in her ears once more, squeezing her heart with a humiliating reality. DOA wallowed in agony, silently questioning whether Song would truly look down on her just like Saran's bitter words. Looking at her reflection in the glass door, the small girl sparked an intention to find an extra part-time job to get money for a makeover. The scenery of Daewon University appeared quiet under the blue sky, but inside, emotional storms were smoldering. In the lecture hall, the professor's words on cognitive dissonance, when belief collides with reality, seemed to be laying DOA's feelings bare. The lecture continued to delve deeper into how people often choose to ignore the truth even when they've known everything all along. The professor asserted that pretending not to know helps reduce the pain better than having to face a cruel reality. DOA focused on working on her laptop in the front row, completely unaware that Saran was sitting right behind her, observing. Saran lightly brought a hand to her mouth with a scheming look in her eyes. She seemed extremely satisfied with her plan. The entire classroom was immersed in the silence of the lecture, masking the silent but highly tense confrontation between the two girls. A notification bell rang on the screen along with a provocative text message from Saran asking if DOA liked the recent gift. In the stifling atmosphere of the lecture hall, Saran smirked and observed from afar while DOA could only keep her head down to avoid her enemy's sharp gaze. A terrifying silence enveloped the little girl. Cold sweat dripped incessantly as the obsession over the betrayal photos continued to tear at her mind. DOA's hands trembled uncontrollably on the keyboard, just as the professor's voice rang out reminding the students to carefully check the assignment details on the online system. He instructed the whole class to complete pages 11 to 20 and asked everyone to share their working files on time, despite DOA's soul being completely shattered at this moment. As soon as she heard the announcement ending the class, DOA hastily shut her laptop and fled the room like a sinner under Saran's calculating surveillance. Walking briskly down the hallway, DOA suddenly halted because of a chill down her spine. She frantically looked back, as if an invisible force was stalking her. Catching her eyes was Saran's haughty face and a subtle smile. Her eyes seemed incredibly smug seeing her praise panic. That piercing gaze sent shivers of terror through DOA. She realized she had absolutely no way out of the vicious psychological game Saran had set up. The school campus gradually became deserted, and aimless footsteps led DOA toward the women's restroom to seek a temporary release. Amidst the dark and silent atmosphere, exhausted, hacking coughs suddenly echoed from behind the ajar door, signaling that an unusual event was about to occur. DOA vomited violently in the restroom. The disgust and pain from her lover's betrayal made the little girl break down completely. A dry knock on the door rang out along with haunting, heavy breathing. DOA trembled in sheer terror upon realizing that the person standing outside was the nightmare of her life. Saran casually walked in with a triumphant look, crossing her arms and sarcastically remarking that DOA running straight in here without saying a word proved she was very unwell. She leaned in close and dropped a humiliating remark, feigning wonder if DOA was pregnant, leaving the little girl utterly shocked and resentful. After a burst of fake laughter, Saran casually said it was just a joke and falsely offered to go buy her medicine, completely ignoring DOA's helpless demand for silence. DOA mustered all her courage, choking back sobs as she asked why she continuously treated her so cruelly and pushed her into a corner like this. Saran slightly tilted her head as if in deep thought, her eyes hiding a coldness and apathy so profound it made the other person shudder. She stared piercingly into the other's soul with a highly calculating expression, seemingly thoroughly enjoying her old friend's collapse. In a tone casually cruel, Saran confessed that she did all this simply because she found it genuinely fun and interesting. The city scenery appeared incredibly quiet but harbored DOA's bitter monologue about a reality of being deceived, stripped of everything, and turned into a joke in someone else's hands. DOA bitterly admitted that she'd been too foolish, to the point of being unable to utter a word in the face of the injustices surrounding her. Sitting blankly on the bench, she silently questioned that Saran already had everything, so what on earth did she still want to strip away from her? The image of Seongwoo and Saran happily together flashed like a knife stabbing through the young girl's bleeding heart. Right as her soul was shattering, the continuous buzzing from her phone suddenly pulled DOA back to the harsh reality. Her face paled when she saw her father's name displayed on the screen, signaling that a new trouble was about to strike. DOA stared at the device in extreme bewilderment, wondering why he chose this absolute worst time to contact her. Her trembling legs rooted themselves to the ground as she silently prayed for the luxury of peace and wished everyone would just leave her alone. Under the clear blue sky, DOA wearily confirmed to her father that she could still answer the phone and asked what exactly had happened. The harsh truth hit when he casually announced the family was moving and demanded his daughter immediately provide 1 million won because they were short on money. The tragedy reached its peak when her father used his new wife's pregnancy as an excuse to extort money, simultaneously callously denying DOA's hardships of having to provide for her younger brother all alone. DOA was shocked to hear the threat of withdrawing the house deposit. She frantically protested that the two siblings couldn't move out right now because Eunho was also staying there. The only response was cruel indifference as her father ordered them to figure it out themselves or move into a gazawan, then loudly scolded that he was tired of having to clean up his children's messes. He constantly whined about his own hardships to coerce her, leaving DOA with no choice but to silently endure in the dark when questioned for not speaking up. In the middle of a crowded park, she bowed her head and agreed to send the money immediately, ignoring the sarcastic remark that she should have done this from the beginning instead of making him out to be the bad guy. After the urge to transfer the money right away, a long beep rang out, cutting off the call and leaving DOA in a daze holding the dead phone. She bit her lip tightly in melancholy, bitterly thinking that to this father, she and Eunho had never been treated like his own flesh and blood. The image of her father's happy new family appeared in stark contrast to the scene of the two siblings lonely carrying their suitcases, standing on the sidelines of his life. DOA remembered her childhood days when she didn't dare utter a word of complaint, only able to resign herself to looking ahead with sad eyes. All just because of the extreme fear that if she rebelled, even the rare phone calls would disappear and the two siblings would be completely abandoned. Returning to the harsh reality, her trembling hands finally pressed the button to transfer 1 million won, draining her very last savings in exchange for a fake peace. Staring at her account balance of just a little over 120,000 won, DOA bitterly realized she was standing on the verge of exhaustion after her father's extortion. Forced laughs and exhausted sighs echoed in the air, depicting the little girl's chaotic state of mind in the face of invisible pressures. DOA sat quietly on the bench with a sad face, staring blankly at her phone as if looking for a way out of her current dead-end situation. A heavy sigh escaped her dry lips. The young girl tried to hold back her breakdown to regain the little courage she had left. DOA told herself she had to quickly find a new part-time job, silently admitting that her life seemed to have been nailed to hardships for a long time. The scene of a coffee shop appeared like a hopeful stopover, where she decided to place her trust to begin a new journey of making a living. The intellectual-looking cafe owner smiled friendlily while reviewing her resume. He asked if her name was DOA and expressed his impression of her extensive experience. DOA's face lit up with bursting happiness upon hearing she was hired. She hurriedly thanked him and asserted that she would work very hard. Sitting and discussing the job details in a quiet space, DOA secretly felt lucky to have found a kind-hearted boss and an incredibly ideal working environment. The meeting ended with the owner's instruction that DOA would be guided by another employee of her age, right when the door chime rang, signaling an unexpected arrival. The owner smiled and announced that DOA's trainer had arrived, making the little girl curiously turn her head to look with an expression of sheer astonishment. Her astonishment quickly turned into an absolute shock when the person walking in was Eunho, just as the boss casually introduced him as his new coworker. While Eunho displayed a dark, murderous face, DOA could only stand rooted to the spot, her mind completely collapsing before this ironic twist of fate. Looking at Eunho's cold back, the little girl kept screaming inside, wondering why, out of all places, this terrifying schoolboy had to appear here. The two of them walked into the staff-only area to prepare for their shift. The atmosphere suddenly became so tense and stifling it was hard to breathe. DOA awkwardly adjusted her tight shirt, silently complaining about the discomfort of the uniform and starting to worry if she had actually gained weight. Her face changed color from anxiety mixed with resentment. DOA bitterly realized that the person she wanted to avoid the most in the world was now right in front of her eyes. While busy tying his apron, Eunho suddenly threw a sarcastic remark, calling DOA a stalker, which made the poor girl flinch in fear. He continued to use a cold tone to accuse her of now following him all the way to his workplace, leaving DOA with no choice but to bow her head, blushing with embarrassment and humiliation. The climax of the tension was when Eunho closed in and interrogated her on whether she had secretly investigated his background beforehand, making DOA grab her head in panic and deny it in tears. DOA cried out in panic, explaining that the fact they both appeared at this cafe was truly just a mere coincidence and nothing more. Under Eunho's murderous gaze, the little girl trembled in fear while the schoolboy remained silently frustrated by this unexpected annoyance. Eunho wearily spoke up to confirm that DOA had previous cafe part-time experience, so he could start handing over the tasks. He rudely handed her the tablet and ordered her to read the instructions herself, simultaneously demanding DOA to finish washing the dishes and prepping the ingredients very quickly. DOA resentfully accepted the tasks while Eunho still wouldn't stop, calling after her to remind her of another important condition. The silent confrontation between the two people tied by fate made the atmosphere at the workplace become so tense and stifling it was hard to breathe. That shooing remark left DOA completely stunned. Her jaw dropped in shock at the unreasonableness and cold attitude of her new coworker. The boy cruelly declared that the real reason was because he absolutely did not want to be involved with or face someone like her ever again. DOA felt so resentful that she was speechless, right when her overly tight shirt suddenly backfired and a button popped off, creating an incredibly humiliating situation. DOA screamed in tears, asking if Eunho really had to behave so unreasonably as to push her into a corner like this. She resentfully explained that she only came here to make a living, right as the button popped off due to the psychological pressure and the excessively tight clothes. Eunho narrowed his eyes with an emotionless face. He calmly received the little girl's wrath without any intention of backing down. DOA's face completely distorted in terror and shame. She stood frozen upon realizing the embarrassing incident that had just occurred right in front of her enemy. The buttons rolling on the staff room floor served as proof of the collapse of the last shred of self-respect DOA had been holding onto. The cafe's door chimes suddenly rang to signal a customer's arrival, forcing both to temporarily put aside the tension to return to a very awkward reality. Eunho indifferently handed the apron to DOA so she could cover her body, while coldly announcing that it was time for her to work. The boy decisively walked out with a calm expression, leaving DOA still trembling and clinging to the locker in despair. Eunho started working at the counter by asking the customer if they wanted to have it here or to go, completely ignoring the chaos that had just unfolded inside. DOA stood frozen behind the door with a broken heart, silently cursing her fate for turning her first day at work into something so humiliating and bitter. DOA covered her face that was flushed with shame, silently lamenting why the button had to betray her at this very moment, making the situation worse than ever before. The little girl fell into a state of sheer panic upon realizing that seemingly every time she was around Eunho, the most embarrassing things always took turns striking her. Resentful for being chased away, DOA silently screamed inside that she, too, didn't want to have to work with a cold and hateful jerk like him at all. Behind the bar, the shelves fully stocked with tea and coffee quietly witnessed the tense contrast in moods between the two destined people. Eunho frowned in annoyance, feeling his lips still tingling. He silently cursed his bad luck for constantly having to bump into this troublesome girl. The boy narrowed his eyes in doubt about the other's working ability, even maliciously imagining the scene of DOA clumsily breaking things and causing trouble everywhere. With a highly vigilant attitude, Eunho quietly monitored DOA's every move to see if this stalker girl actually knew how to serve customers. However, his disdainful expression suddenly turned into sheer astonishment when directly witnessing the little girl's unexpectedly impressive work results. The entire prep area now appeared incredibly clean and shiny, and all the tools were neatly arranged in an unbelievably professional manner. Eunho absent-mindedly opened the refrigerator door and froze when he saw everything was perfectly prepared. he was forced to admit that DOA had finished the work much faster than he thought. Eunho narrowed his eyes in full doubt, secretly wondering about the sudden change in attitude of the little girl standing in front of him. The boy abruptly turned around, making the atmosphere in the prep counter suddenly become more stifling and tense than ever. Eunho's sudden appearance made DOA jump in fear. She yelled out reproaches for being startled by him right when she was focused on working. Regaining her composure, DOA explained that she was just restocking the prep ingredients, even as Eunho coldly questioned if she was carrying a guilty conscience to be so easily provoked. Eunho stood still, staring intently at DOA. He silently admitted his amazement at her neat and efficient working ability that exceeded his expectations. It was already late at night. The quiet darkness began to blanket the high-rise buildings of the bustling city. The sparkling electric lights amidst the dark space served as proof of a long, exhausting day full of unnamed troubles that had just passed. DOA stepped into the house with an aching body. She wearily threw herself onto the sofa and let out a complaint about the exhaustion taking over her body. Lying blankly in the middle of the empty room, the little girl still found it hard to accept the harsh truth that she would have to continue working with young Eunho for the foreseeable future. Under the dim light, DOA's eyes showed deep concern along with a secret determination that no matter how harsh life gets, she still had to bite the bullet and endure it to overcome adversity. A sinewy fist abruptly swung up, shattering the quiet atmosphere, inevitably making the onlookers startle. DOA stood frozen with her eyes widened in terror, seeing Eunho's fist stop right next to her pale face. The illusion of a brawl vanished when Eunho grumpily demanded she use words instead of just trembling, making DOA secretly curse him for being a madman. The boy casually opened his palm to reveal a small safety pin, simultaneously ordering her to take it to fix the recent wardrobe malfunction. Still in shock, DOA awkwardly reached out to accept the lifesaver gift from the person she originally thought was her sworn enemy. The little girl's face suddenly turned bright red. DOA slightly bowed her head to send her sincere thanks for the subtle act of care hidden behind the other's rude exterior. Eunho indifferently turned around and walked away without even leaving a reply, leaving DOA standing in a daze watching that cold figure. Lying limply on the sofa after an exhausting shift, DOA sparked the thought that perhaps she and that obnoxious coworker could still get along. The little girl's eyes showed a hint of sadness as she told herself that burying her head in work would give her less time to think about other heartbreaking things. The apartment scenery sank into a quiet darkness with DOA's small silhouette on the sofa, ending a long day full of intense psychological turmoil. DOA suddenly sprang up from the sofa with a determined face, telling herself she wasn't allowed to continue wallowing in exhaustion right now. She reached for her phone and sparked the intention to go take a nice clean shower before tackling the pile of unfinished homework. But DOA's mind suddenly froze when she read a cold text message from Seongwoo announcing that he wouldn't be coming home tonight. A sense of disappointment invaded her soul, causing the little girl to collapse onto the chair, bitterly realizing she had once again been left alone by her lover. Curled up in the empty room, DOA buried her head in her hands with extreme torment, questioning whether Seongwoo was currently by CO Saran's side. The next morning at school, Chaeyoung frantically held out her phone to interrogate her about the group photo with Saran and scolded DOA for not replying to her text. DOA could only offer an awkwardly forced smile. She tried to cover it up by saying she was so distracted that she completely forgot about everything around her. Amidst the crowded lecture hall, she hastily denied having a close relationship with her enemy, which made Chaeyoung even more suspicious and endlessly questioning. Brushing aside her friend's curiosity, DOA suddenly became serious and announced that she had an extremely important matter on which she wanted to seek her advice. Faced with her best friend's sudden psychological shift, Chaeyoung could only drop her jaw in amazement, wondering if she was actually capable of carrying this secret. DOA nervously asked her best friend if there was something wrong with her dressing style since she always felt out of place in a crowd. Before Chaeyoung could answer, Saran quietly closed in from behind with a sly smile, pretending to ask if anyone had just insulted DOA. The socialite's haughty hand slowly pulled out the chair next to DOA, creating an invisible pressure that made the surrounding atmosphere suddenly freeze. Saran's ostentatious presence immediately attracted countless curious glances and whispers from other students in the lecture hall. Saran casually rested her hands on the table and offered to sit together, leaving both DOA and Chae-young inevitably stunned by this abruptness. DOA's trembling eyes looked up at her enemy. She clearly felt the danger lurking behind the fake friendly face of her old friend. The scene suddenly shifted to a dark room, where the continuous ringing of a phone tore through the silence of the late night. The glowing phone on the desk amidst a messy pile of documents signaled that an important call was waiting to be connected. Eunho wearily picked up the phone and responded in a deep, husky tone, secretly wondering what the other person wanted to contact him at this hour. The boy quickly discovered the transmission error and focused on typing on the keyboard to resend the file, making an effort to finish his pending work before resting. Eunho sat with his head slumped at his desk, looking completely exhausted after a long, sleepless night. He immersed himself under the shower to wash away the sleepiness and told himself he had to catch a quick nap before going to school. Just as he lay down on the bed, Eunho showed annoyance, as his ideal resting place was constantly disturbed by the sound of people coming in and out. He turned and walked away in frustration, silently blaming Kim Hyun-soo for giving the key to Seongwoo. Eunho's eyes clouded with disgust, feeling like the people around him were intentionally stepping in and messing up his peaceful life. At the lecture hall, the atmosphere suddenly became suffocating when Sarand unexpectedly approached and asked for permission to sit next to DOA and her best friend. The appearance of the stylish, rich girl immediately attracted a series of scrutinizing gazes and whispering murmurs from the surrounding students. Despite the tense environment, Sarand maintained a radiant, innocent smile as if nothing had ever happened. She took the initiative to strike up a conversation and firmly asserted that she recognized Chae-young as DOA's closest friend. Faced with the fake enthusiasm about talking in person for the first time, Chae-young could only sweat profusely and force a smile to accept this overwhelming presence. Chae-young couldn't help but marvel at the expensive designer Myo outfit and silently gasped upon learning its value was up to $3,000. Flashing a friendly smile, Saran comfortably admitted that she just had a hobby of looking at luxury goods, even though she sometimes couldn't afford to own them. Despite Chae-young worrying that her words sounded pathetic, Saran smirked, mocking those who liked to pretend to be rich, and questioned whether she herself was among them. With excitement clearly showing on her flushed face, Chae-young immediately suggested they follow each other on Instagram. Saran casually revealed that she had actually been following her for a long time, making Chae-young extremely surprised and hurriedly asking for her username to confirm. While Chae-young was thrilled to discover they were mutuals, she turned to ask DOA why she still refused to use social media. Darkness engulfed DOA's pale face as she sat in a daze, her eyes filled with terror and gloom as the pain of betrayal gnawed at her mind. Saran leaned in close and whispered triumphantly into DOA's ear, asking what she really thought about the gift containing the cruel truth that she had given. Before her trembling silence, the wicked girl continued her mental torture by pretending to offer DOA a different gift if she felt unsatisfied. Her resentment peaking in an illusion, DOA madly lunged forward to strangle Saran, as if to erase all the torment she was pouring into her life. Saran brought her face close to DOA's and threw out sarcastic remarks, pressing for the reason why she continued to keep such a mysteriously silent attitude. The wicked girl started putting on an act, collapsing on the desk and whining about being hurt, causing an anxious Chae-young to ask about the abnormality happening between the two friends. Witnessing Saran fake suffering over the rejected gift, Chae-young spoke up to reproach DOA, saying she should give an explanation instead of just standing there in a daze. Unable to bear the pressure any longer, DOA hastily stood up and left the lecture hall with the excuse of needing to use the restroom to escape the siege of gossip. Eunho frowned in utter disgust at the noisy theatrical display, while Saran continuously played the good girl role, insisting on following to take care of her friend. Watching DOA's trembling figure, Eunho couldn't help but feel she was truly pathetic for not having even a shred of courage to stand up and defend herself. He silently thought that it was her weakness and habit of running away from every problem that made DOA an easy target for others to trample on at will. Although annoyance surged within him, Eunho tried to maintain his cold demeanor and reminded himself that the girl's affairs had absolutely nothing to do with him. Under the twilight sky blanketing Cafe Eden, he ruthlessly concluded that if DOA wanted to continue playing the fool, that was her own choice. However, trouble struck right at the workplace when a female customer with deeply mysterious movements suddenly appeared and threw out a challenging question about her identity. Eunho froze with a bewildered expression in the face of the highly provocative question from the strange customer who had just appeared at the counter. He immediately spoke up to question the identity of the girl standing opposite him with an extremely cold and serious attitude. She took off her sunglasses and smugly boasted that she was a famous YouTuber under the stage name Today Na, only to receive a completely dismissive affirmation from the guy. She acted astonished and continuously mocked Eunho as being backward for knowing absolutely nothing about social media or today's online video platforms. She quickly shoved her phone screen forward to show off her personal channel with millions of followers and offered to post a really good review video of this cafe. Ignoring all the virtual fame, Eunho bluntly refused the sponsorship offer and demanded she quickly place her order, so as not to interrupt the line of people waiting behind her. In the face of the customer's outrage and harsh screaming, DOA hastily rushed out to intervene and salvage the situation that was gradually spiraling out of control. DOA tactfully invited her to another area to handle it privately, while Eunho indifferently continued his job of welcoming the next customers. Even though she tried to explain that she had no right to give freebies without the owner's permission, DOA was still forced into a tight spot by the customer. The YouTuber's wrath terrified DOA, causing her to hurriedly back down and promise the utmost discounts if she had the authority to decide. DOA pretended to be a diehard fan and endlessly praised the YouTuber's real-life beauty to soothe the tense atmosphere. She skillfully guided her to an area she called the VIP seating and told her to keep it a secret, making the other party extremely smug, while Eunho could only silently observe from afar. The doorbell rang, signaling that the troublesome customer had finally left along with the cafe's repeatedly polite farewell greetings. Eunho immediately questioned since when the cafe had a VIP area and bluntly called DOA a scammer when she admitted it was just a trick to cope. DOA explained that those types of customers always want to feel special and she was afraid a bad online review would ruin the business. Eunho showed an indifferent attitude when asking back what the worst consequence could be. Wouldn't it just be them getting fired? DOA's eyes were heavy with thought as she assumed he could say such reckless things because he was already well off, leaving Eunho to just tell her to do as she pleased. Eunho fell into silence with a complex gaze directed at the small girl carrying far too many insecurities. Astonishment clearly showed in Eunho's eyes as he suddenly realized an unexpected truth about who DOA was. Unable to suppress his doubts any longer, Eunho suddenly delved deep into DOA's mind with a direct question about why she chose to date a scumbag like Seongwoo. Seongwoo noticed that Saran had been abnormally stopping by the bar where he worked every single day lately. He flashed a social smile and remarked that she was their regular customer, helping to keep this place's business afloat. Approaching mysteriously, Saran leaned close to his ear and whispered, asking if he wanted to know an earth-shattering secret. She kept tossing flirtatious remarks about his looks and suggested that just a wink was enough to make countless girls swoon. The atmosphere suddenly froze when Saran casually declared that she had told DOA everything. The wicked girl emphasized that what she had revealed was the exact dirty secret he had been trying so hard to hide all this time. Seongwoo's face immediately lost its color in horror as he shakily pressed her on what she had actually said to DOA. Saran burst into delighted laughter upon witnessing the sheer panic clearly etched on the sinner's face. In his anxiety over being exposed, he hastily signaled for her to step outside together to resolve things privately. Under the dim light at the emergency exit, Seongwoo angrily interrogated Saran about her true intentions and the words she had stuffed into DOA's head. Saran smirked triumphantly as she pressed on whether Seongwoo was sweating bullets, fearing she had spilled absolutely everything. Seongwoo's face hardened with a menacing look. He roared in desperation and forced her to immediately spit out what she had revealed to DOA. The wicked girl burst into delighted laughter at the sinner's panic, then casually tossed a joking remark that she didn't say much anyway. Looking deep into Seongwoo's resentful eyes, Saran silently mocked how ridiculous his currently pitiful face looked. In the gloomy darkness, Saran ruthlessly exposed the truth that he was actually just a cheating bastard deceiving his innocent girlfriend. She bitterly exclaimed that if only she had been born a man, life would have been easy, prompting an angry Seongwoo to warn her to keep her mouth shut. Not flinching in the least at the threat, Saran pointed her finger authoritatively and ordered him to shut his mouth right away. Her eyes suddenly turned crazed as she declared that she was the one holding the leash, while warning Seongwoo to behave obediently. Meanwhile, The space at Cafe Eden still sparkled under the lights, hiding the dark schemes boiling behind the glass windows. Everything in the kitchen area was clean to a shine, silently witnessing the collapse of a relationship filled with lies and manipulation. Eunho stood dumbfounded in the middle of the cafe, silently amazed that he had absolutely no work left to do. As Han-dua worked so fast, he had to wonder if she was a thousand-handed bodhisattva. He stepped into the staff room with a bewildered look, silently guessing where that small girl had run off to, or if she was bending over cleaning the restroom again. Seeing the laptop still open on the table, Eunho realized that even though he had told her to go rest, DOA was still deeply engrossed in finishing her class assignments. He moved closer to observe the lines of text on the screen and was suddenly stunned, silently admitting in his heart that she truly was someone with very impressive writing skills. Memories of their first meeting suddenly rushed back, making Eunho recall the image of DOA panicking with tears in her eyes, desperately begging him not to spread rumors about the minor incident between them. He frowned slightly as he remembered the scene of her being led by the nose and enduring control without knowing a thing about the shady deeds her boyfriend was sneaking around doing. Witnessing DOA being publicly humiliated by Saran at school without being able to do anything, Eunho had once ruthlessly concluded that she was just a miserable and pitifully weak person. However, looking at the spotlessly clean cafe space right now, he was forced to change his perspective and admit that she truly was an extremely capable worker. Eunho's eyes glued to the computer screen once more, silently marveling that this girl's writing style wasn't just good, but also incredibly professional. Recalling the way DOA skillfully handled the bossy YouTuber customer earlier, he silently realized she was not foolish at all, but extremely sharp in navigating social situations. Eunho silently observed DOA working and realized she wasn't just capable, but also knew how to use sarcasm to cope, making him just let her do things her own way. His gaze suddenly became complex upon noticing she was actually a very normal person, but it was exactly that which caused a huge question to start kindling in his heart. Unable to hold back any longer, Eunho abruptly turned and dug deep into DOA's mind with a direct question as to why she chose to date that guy Seongwoo. DOA froze for a moment with a look of utter astonishment, her eyes wide with shock as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard from her cold colleague's mouth. Faced with the small girl's flustered and fearful attitude, Eunho silently cursed that boyfriend for being a piece of trash and pressed again to confirm if they were actually in a relationship. DOA flushed with anger and asserted that she loved him, which was why they were dating, but Eunho still wouldn't let it go and continued probing about what on earth she could like in a guy like that. The barrage of questions left DOA completely baffled. She could only stare blankly and repeat his interrogation while the atmosphere at the bar counter suddenly became extremely tense. Her initial confidence gradually faded. DOA bowed her head, fell into deep thought, and began to question herself about the real reason she had always been so deeply attached to Seongwoo all this time. While she was still drowning in a mess of thoughts about her love, Eunho suddenly called out to break the gloomy silence enveloping them both. He bluntly declared that it was best for DOA not to date because it only caused her IQ to plummet disastrously, making the girl furiously scream as she thought he was deliberately picking a fight. Eunho pressed to ask when DOA would return his t-shirt and suspected she had sold it, making the girl furiously affirm she had already brought it and demand he return her button-down shirt soon. However, Eunho casually admitted he didn't remember where he put that item or if he even threw it away, making a panicked DOA scream that it wasn't even her stuff to begin with. Eunho continued to question why she would arbitrarily lend someone else's stuff out, leaving DOA to only justify that she was in too much of a rush at that moment right as a customer walked in. Both of them immediately put aside their conflict to flash a professional smile and welcome the customer in unison, even though the air between them remained full of awkwardness. The sound of an order prompted DOA to quickly confirm the request for an iced Americano to go, while Eunho silently prepared the ingredients behind the counter. The male customer took the initiative to offer to handle the payment process, while ceaselessly observing the petite female employee with a curious gaze. DOA bent down, focusing on working at the cash register to finalize the bill, trying to keep her composure, even though she was extremely frustrated inside because of her colleague's attitude. Under the uniform apron, the small girl silently hoped that the busyness of work would help her temporarily forget the troubles and burdens besieging her life. Seeing DOA's innocent facial expression, The male customer blushed slightly and silently marveled in amusement while she merely asked him gently to please wait a moment. Suddenly, the strange man leaned in close and threw out an indecent question about whether she had a boyfriend yet, leaving DOA stunned by the abruptness. DOA awkwardly rejected the request for her phone number and said she already had a boyfriend, even though her face clearly showed uneasiness in front of the strange customer. The man refused to give up and even loudly doubted if she was just lying because she didn't want to get to know him. He continued pushing, asking how long they had been dating. Right at that moment, the loud slam of a cup hitting the table cut the conversation short. Eunho unexpectedly appeared and coldly handed the iced Americano to the customer with an expressionless face to bail his colleague out. The guy radiated a terrifying murderous aura along with a sharp glare, while growling a command for the bossy customer to get lost immediately. Faced with Eunho's sudden ferocity, the man's face turned pale, and he could only stammer a thank you in sheer terror. He hurriedly grabbed the coffee cup and fled the cafe as if he had just encountered a real-life nightmare, leaving behind a silent space. The atmosphere returned to normal as Eunho casually went back to wiping down the bar, while DOA remained standing in a daze observing him. Looking at her colleague's cold yet reliable back, the small girl blushed slightly and silently wondered if he had just helped her. Eunho suddenly turned his head, catching her gaze, and coldly asked what on earth she was looking at, making a startled DOA completely flustered. DOA told herself she was probably just over-imagining Eunho's kindness, while the guy still kept a sullen face, as if he was annoyed with the whole world. Eunho frowned in utter frustration, silently wondering why this small girl was always a magnet for the weirdos and perverts around. He turned his back to focus on cleaning up the pile of dishes with loud clinking sounds, trying to use work to dispel the creeping sense of unease. Darkness gradually covered the deserted neighborhood, signaling that a long night full of dark schemes was beginning to stalk Cafe Eden. Under the dim streetlights, the customer from earlier stood quietly from a distance observing the cafe, a half-lit cigarette in his hand and eyes full of malice. He angrily cursed Eunho's presence and was secretly jealous of his large build, while feeling regretful thinking that a beautiful girl like DOA was dating that guy. His crazed gaze clung tightly to DOA through the glass. He reassured himself that she had refused to give her phone number simply because she was on the clock. He started calculating the cafe's closing time and secretly memorized DOA's off-work hours to prepare for an elaborate stalking plan. The dry sound of a shutter clicked as he stealthily took a picture of DOA, officially commencing his sixth stalking operation.